The surgeon's hands trembled as he peeled away the final layers of gauze. "You can breathe normally now, Miss Evans," Dr. Chen said, his voice a low tremor that betrayed his attempt at calm. "We're all done." He stepped back, and through the blur of my tearing eyes, I saw her. Sophia. She stood behind him, a placid smile on her face. My face. My original face, the one I'd paid $50,000 to reshape into something I could love, was now hers. It looked radiant, perfect. As the last bandage fell away, a wave of cold air hit my raw skin. I could feel the botched reconstruction in the painful pulling around my eyes, the swollen, uneven line of my jaw, and the angry red lines of infection already blooming across my cheek. "What is this?" I rasped, my voice a broken thing. I struggled to sit up, my gaze locked on the woman who had stolen my life. "Her! Why is she wearing my face?" Dr. Chen frowned, turning to his silent observer. "Miss Evans, this is your cousin Sophia. She's here for support, remember?" "I remember that she's a liar," I shot back, pointing a shaking finger. "That face she has on, it's mine. This thing on my head is hers. This is her botched surgery you've grafted onto me." Sophia stepped forward, all sweet reason and poisonous pity. "Maya, darling, you're confused. The trauma of the surgery, the anesthesia, it's a lot to process. Dr. Chen did a wonderful job." "A wonderful job? Look at me!" I shrieked, my voice cracking. "This isn't what I paid for. This is a monstrosity." "The preoperative scans were matched to your biometrics, Miss Evans," Dr. Chen said, his tone shifting from gentle to defensive. "I followed the approved surgical plan precisely. This is the face that was documented and authorized." "By whom?" I demanded. "By her pretending to be me?" "Dr. Chen, look at her. That is Maya Evans' face. I should know. I lived with it for 28 years. "She's delirious, doctor," Sophia said smoothly, touching his arm. "She was so anxious before the procedure. She spoke about wanting to be someone else entirely. Maybe this is some kind of psychological break." "I'm not having a break. I'm being robbed," I countered, my voice rising with panic. "She's not just stealing my face, she's stealing my entire life. My fiancé, my inheritance. It's all tied to my identity." The sharp, clean scent of antiseptic burned my nostrils. I leaned toward the gleaming surgical lamp, and the reflection that met me was a carnival mirror horror show. Puffy, grotesquely asymmetrical, a monster. "This was her face," I whispered, turning my desperate eyes to Dr. Chen. "The one she hated. She gave it to me." "You're hysterical," Sophia said, her voice dropping, taking on a sharp edge of command. "Doctor, is this a normal reaction? Perhaps she needs a sedative before she hurts herself." "No!" I lunged forward, but the pain was a leash, yanking me back. "Don't you dare. She planned this. She fooled you. All that paperwork you have is probably forged." "That's a very serious accusation," Dr. Chen said, his face hardening. "The documents were all verified. The final consultations were with you." He was looking at Sophia. "Of course they were, doctor," she said, her voice soft again. "Poor Maya is just so distraught." My stomach dropped like a stone. He believed her. Of course he did. She was calm, beautiful, and wearing my face. I was a hysterical, swollen monster. The whole terrifying scope of her betrayal settled over me. This was a coup, and I was the deposed queen. "I think we should let you rest," Dr. Chen said, his patience gone. "Look, the medical board's final review for your case is tomorrow at 3 p.m. It's just a formality. Sophia can take you home after that." "Home?" I laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "She's not taking me anywhere. By tomorrow, she'll have you convinced I'm insane, and she'll be asking you to commit me. Is that the plan, Sophia? Get rid of me for good?" Sophia just gave me a sad little shake of her head, a masterful performance of pity for the doctor's benefit. 18 hours. The deadline crashed down on me. I had 18 hours to reclaim a life that was already slipping through my fingers. I stopped struggling and met Sophia's cool, triumphant gaze. She thought she had won. She thought I was broken. I gripped the examination table's cold metal edge, digging my nails into the vinyl padding. The pain was an anchor in the swirling vortex of my fear. My mind, suddenly sharp and clear, began to calculate. 18 hours wasn't a death sentence. It was a countdown, and I was already planning my first move. She may have stolen my face, but she had no idea who she was dealing with. I feigned a wave of dizziness, slumping against the pillows until Dr. Chen and Sophia exchanged a worried glance. I I think I'm going to be sick, I mumbled, pressing a hand to my mouth. The bathroom, please. It was the oldest trick in the book, but their belief in my fragile state was my greatest asset. Sophia, ever the doting cousin, made a move to help me, but I flinched away from her touch with such violence that she recoiled. Dr. Chen gestured to the ensuite. Of course, take your time. The moment the heavy door clicked shut behind me, I locked it and lunged for my purse, which they'd carelessly left on the counter. My hands shook so badly it took 3 tries to get my phone out. The screen wouldn't unlock. Facial recognition couldn't see a face, only a swollen, bruised mask. I cursed and shakily typed in my passcode, my distorted vision making the numbers swim. I scrolled to the one person I knew would believe a crazy story. I dialed Marcus. Maya, is that you? You sound awful, were the first words out of his mouth. He was an investigative journalist. He noticed details. It's me, Marcus, I said, my voice a raw whisper. Listen to me. I don't have time to explain everything, but I am in serious trouble. I need you to meet me at Sophia's apartment in 2 hours. Don't call her, don't text her, just be there. Whoa, slow down. What's going on? Where are you? You sound like you've been gargling gravel. I'm at the hospital. I just got out of surgery. Surgery? Why didn't you tell me? He asked, concern warming his voice. Is everything okay? No, nothing is okay, I hissed, leaning my forehead against the cold tile wall. She did something, Marcus. Sophia. She switched us. A beat of silence. Switched you? What does that even mean? Maya, you're not making any sense. You sound different. That's because I'm not the same person who trusted her yesterday, I said, the words tasting like acid. She has my face, Marcus, literally, and I have hers, the botched version. She scammed the surgeon and I'm trapped. Please, you have to help me. Bring your camera equipment, all of it. The small stuff, discreet. We need proof. My God, he breathed. Okay, I'm on my way. Sophia's apartment, 2 hours. Sneaking out of the hospital was easier than I expected. A discarded orderly's jacket, a surgical mask pulled high, and a head ducked low got me past the nurse's station. The cab ride was agony. Every bump in the road a fresh torment to my mutilated face. Marcus was waiting in the alley behind her building, his black messenger bag slung over his shoulder. When I stepped out of the cab and into the dim light, he physically recoiled. Jesus Christ, Maya, what did she do to you? She called it an upgrade, I said bitterly, pulling the key to Sophia's apartment from my pocket. I'd kept it after helping her move in, a gesture of friendship she had clearly seen as an opportunity. She must have known I'd never throw it away. Come on. She thinks I'm resting peacefully until the board review tomorrow afternoon. We don't have much time. We slipped into the building and took the stairs. Her apartment was pristine, minimalist, and cold, just like its temporary occupant. Nothing was out of place, a sterile environment wiped clean of any real personality. It was a stage, and the show was over. Except for one place. She was always pathologically vain, I murmured, heading straight for the bedroom. If there's evidence, it'll be at her vanity. The mirrored table was an altar to her obsession. Perfumes, lotions, and makeup were arranged with military precision. At first glance, it was as immaculate as the rest of the apartment. But I knew Sophia. I started opening drawers. The first was full of silk scarves. The second held jewelry. The third was locked. Marcus, can you get this open? I asked, my voice tight. He pulled a small toolkit from his bag and had the cheap lock picked in under a minute. Inside, my blood ran cold. It was a treasure trove of her crimes. There were a dozen prescription bottles, all for high-grade painkillers. The name on every single one was mine. She's been stealing my pills, I whispered in horror. I thought I was just losing them. It's worse than that, Maya, Marcus said, holding up a sheaf of papers from beneath the bottles. These look like invoices from a dealer downtown. She hasn't been taking them. She's been selling them. Beneath the invoices was the mother lode. A stack of forged documents, letterheads from Dr. Chen's office, medical history forms filled out in her handwriting but signed with a perfect forgery of my signature, consultation notes detailing how Maya Evans was feeling, what her surgical goals were. It was months of premeditated fraud, a meticulous campaign to impersonate me at every critical step. She's been seeing him as you for almost a year, Marcus said, his voice grim as he filmed each document with a small, high-resolution camera. She built the perfect legend. By the time you showed up for the actual surgery, the staff already had a relationship with her. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the full weight of her sociopathy crushing me. How could I have been so blind? Every complaint she'd made about her own face, every bit of admiration she'd shown for mine, it was all market research. As Marcus carefully documented the last of the forged notes, my eyes fell on a thick envelope sticking out from under the vanity's blotter. It was a lease agreement. I snatched it up, my heart pounding a frantic, painful rhythm against my ribs. I scanned the legal text, my gaze landing on the termination clause. My breath caught in my throat. "Marcus," I said, my voice trembling with a new urgency. "We have a bigger problem." He looked up from his camera. "What is it?" "The lease. It expires tonight, at midnight." I held up the paper, my fingers shaking on the date. This whole place, this identity she's been living in while she set this up, it's all about to be scrubbed. She's not planning to stick around. After that board review tomorrow, she'll have my name, my credentials, and my money. She'll disappear, and this entire paper trail will disappear with her. The plan was risky, bordering on insane, but it was the only one we had. Less than 12 hours after I'd woken up to a living nightmare, I was sitting in a cafe across the street from the downtown medical plaza, the very building where my identity had been surgically peeled away. My face was a throbbing, swollen ruin, and I kept my head down, the high collar of the jacket Marcus had loaned me pulled up to my eyes, a wool hat covering the rest. Every nerve ending screamed in protest. Marcus sat opposite me, a long lens camera resting on the table between us, disguised by a strategically placed newspaper. From our vantage point, we had a clear view of the glass entrance to the plaza, a sterile gateway to the world Sophia was so desperate to claim. We'd gambled that she wouldn't just wait for the board review. Her brand of evil was proactive. She'd want to smooth the tracks, ensure her victory was absolute. We were betting she'd come here to see Dr. Chen. "Are you sure about this, Maya?" Marcus asked, his voice low. "If she sees you." "She won't see me," I insisted, my own voice muffled by the collar. "She'll see a pathetic woman hiding in a corner. She's looking for a victim, not a threat. Besides, we need this. We need to show she's actively impersonating me outside of that one disastrous surgery. We need a pattern." "And what if she doesn't show?" "She'll show," I said with grim certainty. "Pride is her favorite sin. She'll want to visit the scene of her triumph to make sure her dupe is still dancing on her strings." As if on cue, a taxi pulled up to the curb and she stepped out. My stomach twisted into a knot. She was wearing my favorite cashmere coat, though one I'd saved for months to buy. She walked with my confident stride, her head held high, a picture of a woman who had never known a day of self-doubt. She looked incredible. She looked like me, but better, more polished. Dr. Chen met her at the door, a wide, paternal smile on his face. He shook her hand. My hand. "There they are," Marcus breathed, lifting his camera slightly. "Okay, showtime. Let's see what the happy couple is up to." He began shooting, the clicks of his camera masked by the hiss of the espresso machine behind us. Sophia was talking animatedly, using her hands for emphasis the way I did. She exuded charm, laughing at something Dr. Chen said, tilting her head in that way she'd perfected from watching me. She was good. Terrifyingly good. She handed him a file and he nodded, clapping her on the shoulder reassuringly. "She's doing it," I whispered, watching them through the window. "She's getting him to fast-track the board certification. She's locking it down." "I'm getting it all," Marcus assured me. "Just stay calm. Let her dig her own grave." But Sophia wasn't just proud, she was paranoid. As Dr. Chen turned to head back inside, her gaze swept the street. For a split second, her eyes scanned past our window, then snapped back. The friendly smile on my face froze. It was replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated fury. She had seen the camera's lens. She had seen me. Shit, Marcus muttered, lowering the camera. Don't stop, I ordered. Keep filming, all of it. She said a single sharp word to Dr. Chen, who looked over in our direction with a puzzled expression. Then she started across the street, weaving through the traffic with a predator's focused intent. The sharp clicks of her heels on the wet pavement sounded like gunshots, each one a countdown to a confrontation I wasn't sure I was ready for. She burst through the cafe door, letting it slam against the frame, causing half the patrons to jump. She ignored them, her eyes locked on our table. She marched toward us, a storm in my cashmere coat. "What do you think you're doing?" She seethed, her voice a low, dangerous snarl meant only for us. "Having coffee," Marcus said calmly, not looking up from his newspaper. "Is there a problem?" "Don't play dumb with me, Marcus, and you," she spat, finally looking at me, at the disfigured mask I wore. "You should be in a hospital bed. What is this pathetic little scheme?" "It's called saving my life," I said, my voice quiet but steady. "Something you know a lot about ruining." "You can't prove anything, Maya," she sneered, leaning over our table. Her perfume, my perfume, washed over me, making me nauseous. "Watch me," I replied, meeting her gaze. I felt strangely calm. The worst had already happened. All that was left was the fight. "That camera has nothing on it. Just a friendly chat between a doctor and his patient," she said. "As for what's in my apartment, good luck. My word against the crazy, mutilated woman who attacked me in a fit of jealous rage." "Is that the story you're going with?" I asked. "What about the pills, Sophia? The ones you've been stealing from me and selling for months?" A flicker of panic in her eyes. She recovered quickly. "Those pills were prescribed to me, not you. For my chronic pain. You're the one who stole them." It was the moment I'd been waiting for, the final fatal trap. I allowed myself a small, painful smile. "Under which name, Sophia?" The question hung in the air between us. The color drained from her cheeks. She had no answer. If the pills were prescribed to her, Sophia, they wouldn't be in bottles with my name on them. If they were prescribed to her while she was impersonating me, that was an admission of felony fraud. Checkmate. "You bitch," she whispered, her voice trembling with rage. "You have no idea," I said. Just then, the door opened again. It was Dr. Chen, his face etched with concern. "Is everything all right over here? Miss Evans, you stormed out so fast." He stopped, his gaze falling on me, huddled in the corner. He looked back at Sophia, then at me again. The confusion was plain on his face. "What's going on?" Sophia grabbed the opportunity to regain control. "This is my cousin," she said to him, her voice once again full of pity. "The one I told you about. She's not well. She's been following me, making accusations. She's obsessed." "She's lying," I said, looking directly at Dr. Chen. "Doctor, that woman is Sophia. She took my place in your operating room. Everything she's told you is a lie." Dr. Chen looked utterly lost, caught in the crossfire between the beautiful, credible woman he knew as his patient and the mangled, frantic creature accusing her. I don't understand." Sophia grabbed his arm. "Let's go, doctor. This is a private family matter. She needs help, not an audience." She shot me one last look, a promise of retribution, and began pulling a bewildered Dr. Chen back toward the door. As they left, the warm buzz of the coffee shop slowly returned. The gentle jazz music, which had been there all along, seemed to mock the ugly, sterile reality of what had just transpired. Our worlds had collided right here, over a table stained with coffee rings. My old life, embodied by Sophia in her expensive coat, had confronted my new one, a world of shadows and pain. But the balance had shifted. We had her on film. We had her on audio. We had pushed her, and she had revealed the truth of her venomous soul. Marcus finally lowered his newspaper, a small, grim smile on his face as he clicked off the audio recorder on his phone. "Well," he said, "that escalated quickly. I think we've got her." I stared out the window at the gleaming medical plaza, a monument to ambition and deceit. We had what we needed to expose her, but I knew this was far from over. This was just the opening battle. The adrenaline from the confrontation drained away, leaving a hollow, throbbing ache in its place. Marcus was quietly reviewing the footage on his camera, a grim line set in his jaw. We had her. We had a public outburst, a panicked, implicit confession. It felt like a victory, but a fragile one. We had a piece of the puzzle, but Sophia still held the box. I was staring into the dregs of my cold coffee when the cafe door chimed again. My entire body tensed, expecting Sophia to return, flanked by security or police. But it was Dr. Chen, and he was alone. He looked older than he had 20 minutes ago, his face pale and drawn, his usual professional confidence completely stripped away. He clutched a leather briefcase to his chest like a shield. He scanned the cafe, his eyes landing on our table. With a deep breath, he walked toward us. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the empty chair. His voice was unsteady. Marcus and I exchanged a look. "It's a free country," Marcus said, his tone clipped. He slid his camera into his bag but kept his hand on it. Dr. Chen sank into the chair, placing the briefcase on the table with a heavy thud. He let out a long, shuddering sigh and looked at me. For the first time, he looked at my ruined face without flinching, and I saw not confusion or clinical assessment, but a dawning, horrified guilt. "I owe you," he began, his voice cracking, "a profound apology, a catastrophic, career-ending apology. I was a fool, but perhaps not entirely in the way that you think." I stared at him, my silence a wall he would have to break down himself. "I believed her," he continued, his eyes pleading with me to understand. "When she came out of that room with me just now, she kept repeating that you were unstable, obsessed, that you'd been making threats for weeks. She was building a case for a restraining order. She was trying to paint you as the villain." "And you believed her," I stated flatly. It wasn't a question. "At first, yes," he admitted, shamefaced. "On the surface, she was my calm, rational patient, and you were understandably distraught, but it was all a little too perfect, a little too rehearsed. And it confirmed a suspicion the hospital has had for months." Marcus leaned forward, his journalistic instincts kicking in. "What suspicion?" Dr. Chen took a moment, choosing his words carefully. "We never suspected an identity swap. Frankly, such a thing is unprecedented. It's the stuff of science fiction. Our suspicion was more mundane, more common. We suspected your account, Miss Evans, the real Miss Evans, was being used to commit insurance fraud." I blinked. "Insurance fraud? What are you talking about? My insurance covered less than a quarter of the cost. I paid the rest myself." "Exactly," Dr. Chen said, a spark of energy returning to his voice. "The procedure you wanted, while extensive, had very specific billing codes. The patient we knew as Maya Evans, however, kept insisting on adding consultations, extra scans, and preliminary treatments that pushed the claim into a different bracket, a bracket with a much higher payout ceiling. She was padding the bill, creating a paper trail to justify a massive claim for a medically necessary reconstructive procedure. We see it all the time. Someone has a good policy, they exaggerate a condition, get a friendly surgeon to sign off, and the insurance company pays for a cosmetic procedure under the guise of a medical necessity. Our risk management department flagged your account 8 months ago. They instructed me to play along, to document everything, to record every call, every meeting." The cafe seemed to fall silent around me. The clatter of plates, the hiss of the espresso machine, the soft jazz, it all faded into a dull roar in my ears. "You were recording her?" Marcus asked, his voice sharp. "You recorded your conversations with Sophia?" "Every single one," Dr. Chen confirmed. "It's standard protocol in a high-level fraud investigation. I have hours of it, all of it authenticated and time-stamped by the hospital's servers." He patted the briefcase. It's all in here." A hot, violent rage surged through me, so powerful it made me dizzy. "You knew," I hissed, slamming my hand on the table. The coffee cups jumped. "You knew something was wrong. You suspected she was a criminal, and you still let her walk into that operating room? You still let her put her face on me and carve this horror onto my head. You could have stopped this." "I swear to you, I didn't know the extent of it," he pleaded, his hands raised in surrender. I thought I was dealing with a simple, greedy con artist trying to scam an insurance company out of $100,000. I thought the worst that would happen is that we'd deny the claim and she'd be on the hook for the full amount. I never, not in my wildest nightmares, imagined she was perpetrating a crime like this. To me, you were both in on it. I thought you were her accomplice, the actual patient whose face was being used for the before picture in a fraudulent claim. I thought you were both going to split the money. The accusation was so outrageous, so far from the truth, that it knocked the air out of my lungs. I felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in my chest. Me, her accomplice. We couldn't have been further from it. I was her target, her mark, her final victim. What changed your mind? Marcus asked, his voice a low, steady anchor in my sea of fury. What happened between leaving here and coming back? Dr. Chen looked at me, his expression grave. This morning, before all this, she came to my office to give me that paperwork you saw. She was trying to rush the board review. I asked her why the urgency. I was probing, trying to get her to incriminate herself on the insurance matter. I told her that rushing things might look suspicious to the carrier. I was trying to bait a hook, to make her think I was a fellow conspirator. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. And she took it. Hook, line, and sinker. Thinking I was on her side, she confessed to the real motive. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. What did she say? I asked, my voice barely audible. Dr. Chen recounted the conversation. Look, doctor, she said to me, we need to get this done. Forget the insurance company for a minute. They're slow money. There's something bigger here. I have a cousin, a poor, unstable thing, and she's the beneficiary of a massive family trust. But the trustees are archaic. They won't release the funds until she's seen by a psychologist and her condition is stabilized. This surgery is the key. The board certification, your official sign-off, is the proof of treatment they need. Once they see she's recovering, the money flows. We have to get this done by Friday. My blood ran cold. She had twisted the truth of my inheritance into another weapon against me, using it as a motive to manipulate Dr. Chen. She laid out a plan to defraud my family, thinking she was confiding in a co-conspirator for insurance fraud. I whispered, piecing it together. She was admitting to one felony to facilitate another. Precisely, Dr. Chen said. At the time, I thought she was just a truly audacious criminal. But then she saw you. She confronted you. And when she dragged me out of here, I took the audio I'd recorded on my phone during the confrontation and played it for our hospital's chief counsel, alongside the recording from my office this morning. The rage in her voice when she spoke to you, the things she said, the things you said, it all clicked into place. The puzzle pieces formed a picture I hadn't been able to see before. It wasn't about the money, not just the money. It was about replacement. He opened his briefcase. Inside, alongside a laptop, was a thick file folder. He slid it across the table. This is everything. My complete, unedited file on the patient known as Maya Evans. Every recorded call, every forged document she submitted, my own private notes on her inconsistent stories, and a signed, sworn affidavit from me detailing the events of the last 24 hours. And what happens now? Marcus asked. A new, hard certainty settled on Dr. Chen's face. The guilt was still there, but it was overlaid with the resolve of a man trying to fix an unforgivable mistake. What happens now is that we correct this. My testimony, combined with your video footage and the evidence from her apartment, is irrefutable. The hospital's lawyers have already been in contact with the district attorney's office and the FBI. This is no longer a simple fraud case. This is aggravated identity theft, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and practicing medicine without a license, given that she essentially directed her own surgery on you. These are federal offenses. He looked at me, his eyes full of a terrible, grim promise. I can't give you back your face, not today, but I can give you this. By tomorrow evening, one of you will be in federal custody, awaiting arraignment on charges that will put her away for a very, very long time. And the other, he said, his voice softening, will have her name, her life, and her future back. The hospital will, of course, cover the costs of a full reconstructive procedure with any surgeon you choose anywhere in the world. It's the very least we can do. He stood up, leaving the file and the briefcase on the table. I will be at the board review tomorrow, not to certify her, but to testify against her. You have my word. He turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving silence in his wake. I stared at the briefcase. My entire life, the theft of it and the key to its recovery, was contained in that leather box. A wave of relief so intense it was dizzying washed over me, but it was followed by something else, a cold, hard realization. I looked at Marcus. All this time, I said slowly, I've been running scared. I've been reacting, trying to catch up, trying to prove I'm me. My gaze drifted out the window to the medical plaza. I thought of Sophia, so confident in her deception, never realizing that the man she was manipulating was documenting her every move. She was playing chess, but she could only see her side of the board. I've been playing defense, Marcus. I've been trying to stop her from winning. A new feeling, sharp and unfamiliar, crystallized in my chest. It wasn't fear or anger or relief. It was control. That was a mistake. From now on, I'm not playing to not lose. I'm playing to win. The next afternoon, I walked through the double doors of the medical board's conference room with my head held high. I wore no mask, no obscuring collar. I wanted them to see. I wanted every single person in that sterile, wood-paneled room to look at the butchered work of art that was my face and understand the stakes. The room was exactly as I'd imagined. A long mahogany table, a dozen stern-faced men and women in suits, and at the far end, holding court, was Sophia. She was dressed in my elegant navy blue suit, her hair, my hair, swept up perfectly. She was in the middle of a poised, gracious statement, thanking the board and Dr. Chen for their exemplary care. She looked every bit the successful patient, the picture of medical triumph. Her smile was bright and confident. It faltered for only a second when she saw me, a flicker of annoyance, before being replaced by a look of profound, pitying concern. She thought I was there to beg. Dr. Chen walked in behind me, his face grim and resolute. Marcus followed, carrying a laptop and a portable projector. He didn't look at anyone, simply moved to a side table and began setting up his equipment with quiet efficiency. Every eye was on me, on the raw, puckered flesh and angry red lines of infection. The whispers started instantly, a ripple of shock and discomfort around the table. "Miss Evans?" the board chairman, a severe-looking man with silver hair, said, his voice laced with confusion. He was looking at Sophia. Sophia stood, placing her hands on the table in a gesture of magnanimous control. "Gentlemen, ladies, I apologize. This is my cousin Maya. As I've explained to Dr. Chen, she's been unwell. I'm not sure how she got in here." I ignored her and walked directly to the head of the table, my heels clicking purposefully on the marble floor. I took the thick evidence folder from under my arm and slammed it down on the polished mahogany. The sound echoed in the silent room. "Members of the board," I announced, my voice clear and strong, resonating with a power I didn't know I possessed until this moment. "My name is Maya Evans. I am Dr. Chen's patient, and I present definitive proof of surgical identity fraud, grand larceny, and a conspiracy to commit a federal crime perpetrated by that woman." I pointed a steady finger at Sophia. The room erupted. Sophia laughed, a short, sharp bark of disbelief. "This is absurd. She's lying. Look at her face. She's clearly the unstable one. This is exactly the kind of paranoid delusion I was worried about." "Am I, Sophia?" I asked calmly, turning to face her down the long table. "Or am I just the living proof of your crimes?" "This is harassment," she shot back, her voice rising. "This is a private medical hearing, not a stage for my cousin's psychotic breakdown." The chairman banged a heavy gavel on the table. "Order, Dr. Chen. What is the meaning of this?" Dr. Chen stood and addressed the board. "Chairman, members, what I am about to say is the gravest admission of my professional career. I have been fooled. We have all been fooled. That woman," he said, pointing to Sophia, "is an imposter named Sophia Collins. This woman," he gestured to me, "is the real Maya Evans, and she is the victim of a crime so monstrous, I still struggle to comprehend it." He proceeded to lay out the entire story of the hospital's insurance fraud investigation, of Sophia's manipulations, of her unwitting confession in his office. As he spoke, Marcus powered on the projector. The first thing that flashed on the screen behind the chairman was a crystal-clear image of Sophia, wearing my face, storming across the street toward the cafe. Marcus played the video. The entire room watched as Sophia leaned over our table, her face contorted in a mask of rage. They listened to the audio Marcus had captured, her voice dripping with venom. "You can't prove anything, Maya," her recorded voice sneered. Next, Marcus played the audio from Dr. Chen's office. The board listened, their faces growing paler, as Sophia calmly laid out her plan to defraud my family's trust by using the fast-tracked board certification as proof of my recovery. It was undeniable. It was her voice. It was her plan. Sophia was on her feet, her composure beginning to shred. "This is illegal. You recorded me without my consent. It's all fake, doctored. It's inadmissible." "Actually," Marcus spoke up for the first time, his voice calm and factual, "as you were discussing the commission of a felony, you have no reasonable expectation of privacy under state law. It's perfectly admissible, and it's not fake." "This is still her word against mine," Sophia insisted, her eyes darting around the table, looking for a friendly face and finding none. "It's a he said, she said nightmare, cooked up by a jealous relative and a doctor trying to cover up his own incompetence." "I was hoping you'd say that," I said, stepping forward again. I looked at the folder, then back at the board. What Dr. Chen and I didn't know until last night was that I am not her only victim. A new wave of murmurs swept the room. While I was recovering, Marcus was doing what he does best. He's a journalist. He started with the painkillers you were selling, Sophia. He traced the transactions to an encrypted online pharmacy, and he found other sellers in other states. He cross-referenced their names with police reports and legal filings. It turns out you're not very original. I opened the folder and began passing out documents to the stunned board members. This is a police report from a Jane Doe in Arizona. 2 years ago, her long-lost cousin helped her through a rhinoplasty. She woke up with a botched surgery, and her cousin had vanished along with her savings and her identity. This, I passed out another file, is from a woman in Oregon. Her new best friend encouraged her to get a facelift. The friend, who looked remarkably like you, disappeared right after, along with the woman's passport, social security card, and access to her bank accounts. There are 3 others. You've been running this scam across 2 states, a predator moving from city to city, stealing faces and lives systematically. Sophia's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. She looked like a fish gasping for air. Her beautiful, stolen face was ashen. "You can deny the videos and the documents," I said, delivering the final blow. "You can claim we all conspired against you, but there's one thing you can't deny." I held up a final sheet of paper from the folder. It was a DNA analysis report. "While you were sleeping peacefully last night, I had my DNA tested against a sample from my late mother's hairbrush, kept in a family safety deposit box. It's a perfect match. I am Maya Evans." I looked directly at her, my voice dropping. "DNA doesn't lie, Sophia. This is insane," she finally stammered, backing away from the table. "Harassment!" The chairman stood, his face a mask of cold fury. He looked at Sophia with utter contempt. "Miss Collins, or whoever you are, this board finds the evidence presented to be credible and overwhelming. This is no longer a matter for the medical board." He picked up his phone. "We are contacting the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You have perpetrated a multi-state crime spree that ends today, in this room." As if on cue, a sound began to filter in from the street below. Faint at first, then growing steadily, unmistakably louder. A siren, then another. Sophia's head snapped toward the window, her eyes wide with animal terror. Her confident mask didn't just crack. It shattered into a million pieces, and for the first time, I saw the pathetic, terrified ghoul who had been hiding underneath my face all along. The marble columns of the courthouse lobby felt like the pillars of a Roman Colosseum, and I was the spectacle. The air was thick with the heat of television lights and the electric buzz of a media-feeding frenzy. Every major news network was there, their cameras and microphones forming a dense, hungry forest. Marcus stood beside me, a steadying presence in the chaos. The federal prosecutor, a sharp woman named Agent Diaz, had just finished giving me a final briefing. Across the lobby, I could see them, the other victims. The woman from Arizona, her face a testament to a similar, though less severe, ordeal. The man from Oregon, whose life she had financially gutted. We were a small, grim club, brought together by one woman's monstrous ambition. Then, the main courthouse doors swung open, and a wave of activity rippled through the crowd as she was led inside. Sophia was flanked by two stoic U.S. Marshals, her hands cuffed in front of her. But even in federal custody, she was performing. Her shoulders were back, her head held high. She'd managed to get her hands on a designer suit, a soft gray that projected an image of quiet, wronged dignity. Her stolen face was a mask of tragic beauty. She was playing the martyr, the victim of a terrible mistake. The reporters surged forward, shouting questions. "Sophia, did you do it? Are the charges true? Look this way, Sophia." She ignored them all, her eyes scanning the crowd until they found me. A switch flipped. The mask of demure suffering vanished, replaced by a flash of pure, venomous hatred. This was her last stage, her final audience, and she was going to give the performance of a lifetime. With a sudden theatrical cry, she buckled, stumbling forward as if her knees had given out. It was a calculated move. In the marshal's attempt to steady her, she wrenched one arm free and lunged toward the nearest bank of microphones, her voice rising in a desperate, histrionic shriek. "She's the criminal, not me!" she screamed, pointing a manicured, uncuffed finger at me. "That woman is a psychopath who has been obsessed with me for years. She framed me for everything. Look at her scarred face. She did that to herself. She is clearly, profoundly, mentally unfit." The lobby fell silent for a heartbeat. The reporters and camera operators captivated by the raw, unhinged drama. This was better than a boring arraignment. This was a war. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, moving past the prosecutor and into the center of the clearing, directly into Sophia's line of fire. I kept my voice low and calm, a stark contrast to her shrill hysteria. "It's over, Sophia. There's nothing left to lie about." "It's not over until everyone knows the truth," she shrieked. "You paid that doctor to lie. You faked all that evidence. You're a monster." "I have the surgical records, Sophia," I said calmly, holding up the thick file Dr. Chen had given me. "The real ones. The ones that show my medical history, my blood type, my entire life, signed and verified by 3 separate physicians before I ever met you." "Those are fabricated," she spat. "You probably made them in your basement. No one is going to believe a single word from a crazy, disfigured hag." Her words were meant to be daggers, but they glanced off the new armor I wore. "Maybe you're right," I conceded, my voice carrying in the silent room. "Maybe they won't believe the paper. But the evidence isn't just on paper, is it? Then explain why your DNA is under my fingernails from our struggle in the recovery room." The direct hit landed. She flinched. "You attacked me. You were hysterical after the surgery and you lunged at me. I was defending myself." The marshals were closing in on her again, but I held up a hand to them, shaking my head slightly. I wanted this to play out. "That's a good story, very believable. But I just have one question for the jury you're so desperate to appeal to." I took a step closer to her, into the unforgiving glare of the camera lights. "Did I attack you before or after you stole my face?" The question, simple and devastating, hung in the air. The reporters began scribbling furiously. Sophia's eyes darted around, seeing her narrative crumbling, her last-ditch effort failing. She was losing, and in that moment, she made her final, most desperate move. Her eyes widened with a look of manufactured terror. "She's trying to kill me!" she screamed, fumbling with the clasp on her own expensive handbag, which one of the marshals had been holding for her. She ripped it open and pulled out a long, slender object that glinted wickedly under the lights. It was a surgical scalpel. A line of dried brown blood crusted its edge. The crowd gasped audibly. "She threatened me with this," Sophia cried, holding it up for all to see. "Just now, before you all came in, she told me she was going to finish the job. She planted it in my purse. Help me." Someone help me. She's trying to murder me. This was her endgame. To paint me as not just a liar, but a violent attacker, capable of planting evidence and threatening her life. It was a brilliant, evil move, and for a terrifying second, I saw it working. I saw the doubt in the eyes of the reporters, the shock on the faces of the other victims. How could I possibly defend against this? I didn't have to. I caught Marcus's eye across the scrum. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. He had anticipated this. He knew Sophia's playbook was all about escalation, about creating chaos she could exploit. He turned and spoke quietly to Agent Diaz, who in turn spoke into the radio on her shoulder. And then the world shifted. On the massive flat-screen monitors that lined the courthouse lobby, which had been showing a generic news broadcast, the image flickered and changed. It was replaced by a high-angle black-and-white security feed. The timestamp in the corner read 8:46 a.m., not 20 minutes ago. The feed showed the lobby's main entrance. It showed me, standing with Marcus and Agent Diaz, my back to the main walkway. It showed Sophia's lawyer approaching a security guard, causing a deliberate and distracting commotion. And then it showed Sophia, just out of the marshal's line of sight, pulling the small, bloody, plastic-bagged scalpel from her own coat pocket and, with a swift, practiced movement, slipping it into the side pocket of my purse, which was sitting on the bench beside me. A collective gasp went through the lobby, a sound of mass realization. It was followed by a low murmur, then outright jeers. The lie was not only exposed, it had been witnessed by the entire world in real time. Sophia stared at the monitor, her mouth agape. The scalpel clattered from her numb fingers onto the marble floor. There was nowhere left to run, no lies left to tell. The performance was, at long last, truly over. She looked at me, her eyes finally empty of fire, of schemes, of hatred. They were just empty, defeated. Agent Diaz stepped forward to the bank of microphones, her voice crisp and authoritative, cutting through the noise. Sophia Collins, a.k.a. Jacqueline Price, a.k.a. Helena Shaw, she began, listing the aliases Marcus had uncovered, is being charged today with 14 counts of federal and interstate crimes, including aggravated identity theft, wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy to commit medical fraud, witness tampering, and as of 10 minutes ago, planting false evidence in a federal investigation. The marshals took Sophia's arms, and this time, she didn't resist. She was a hollow shell, all her evil magic gone. As they led her away through the jeering crowd, the cameras swiveled away from her and back to me. One of the camera's red recording lights blinked like a tiny, insistent eye. I caught my reflection in its dark, convex lens. The swelling in my face had gone down considerably in the last day. The grotesque puffiness was receding, and the angry infection lines were fading to a pale pink. For the first time since waking up in that hospital room, I saw something familiar in the reflection. It was the arch of my own cheekbone. It was the curve of my own jawline. It wasn't my old face, and it would never be. But as I stared into that lens, I realized it was finally, truly, becoming my own. The roar of the media scrum faded behind us as Marcus guided me into the quiet sanctuary of his car. We sat in the humming silence of the parking garage, the flashing red and blue lights of distant police cars painting strobing patterns on the concrete walls. On his phone, a news anchor was already breathlessly recapping the drama, playing the security footage of Sophia planting the scalpel on a loop. I watched it, detached, as if it were a scene from a movie I'd seen long ago. My hand drifted up to my cheek, my fingers tracing the faint, puckered line of a healing scar near my jaw. The swelling was down, the pain had subsided to a dull ache, and the face beneath my fingertips felt less like a battleground and more like mine. It was a strange and unfamiliar landscape, but it was one I was beginning to recognize. I can't believe I wanted to change what I had, I said softly, my eyes still on the phone screen where Sophia's stolen, perfect face was now a mugshot. My old face. It was fine. Why wasn't it enough? Marcus turned down the volume and looked at me, his expression gentle but honest. He'd been my rock through the entire ordeal. The one person who never doubted me, even when I sounded like a madwoman. He'd seen the ugliest parts of this and the ugliest parts of me, and he was still here. Your face was never the problem, Maya, he said, his voice quiet but firm in the enclosed space of the car. Your trust was. His words struck me with more force than any of Sophia's histrionics. He was right. The flaw wasn't in my bone structure or the shape of my nose. It was in my desperate need for validation, my willingness to hand over my trust, my power, to someone who saw it not as a gift, but as a key. Sophia hadn't just seen a face she wanted. She'd seen a weakness she could exploit. The true flaw was the one inside me, and that was a scar no surgeon could ever fix. 6 months later, I stood on a different kind of stage. There were no cameras, no shouting reporters, just the solemn, wood-paneled quiet of a federal courtroom. I was on the witness stand, my right hand lowered after being sworn in. Down at the defendant's table, Sophia sat between her public defenders. She was a ghost of her former self. Her hair was limp and colorless. Without the designer clothes and the stolen confidence, she was just a small, hollowed-out woman in an orange jumpsuit. The face she had stolen from me looked tired and sallow on her, a mask that no longer fit. She wouldn't look at me. "Miss Evans," the judge said, his voice kind, "please, in your own words, tell the court about the impact of Miss Collins' crimes." I took a deep breath and looked past Sophia toward the other victims sitting in the front row. "Your Honor," I began, my voice clear and steady. For 28 years, I looked in the mirror and saw a face I thought was flawed. I spent my time and my money searching for a way to perfect it. I thought perfection would bring me confidence, that beauty would bring me peace. Sophia Collins didn't just steal my face, she stole that illusion from me. She took my identity, my security, and my inheritance. But the strange thing about having everything taken from you is that you're forced to discover what you have left. I finally allowed my gaze to settle on her. She left me with her discarded face, a botched surgery she couldn't wait to get rid of. And in doing so, she gave me a gift. She forced me to rebuild. The surgery I needed to repair the damage she caused wasn't about vanity. It wasn't about achieving some impossible standard of beauty. It was about survival. It was about reclaiming my own flesh and bone. My face will never be perfect. It has scars now, it has memories, and I have never in my entire life felt more confident or more at peace. The flash of a photographer's strobe brought me back to the present. I was in a bright, airy studio, a world away from the grim reality of the courtroom. I was one of a dozen models, men and women of all ages, for a new awareness campaign sponsored by the American Society of Plastic Surgeons. It was called My Face, My Story. We were all survivors of surgical fraud or medical malpractice. "That's beautiful, Maya, just like that," the photographer said, smiling from behind her camera. "Hold that expression, strength." I held the pose, the lights warm on my skin. My new face, the one masterfully and painstakingly reconstructed by a team of brilliant surgeons, felt completely my own. The scars were still there, faint white lines that traced the history of my ordeal. One ran from the corner of my eye into my hairline. Another curved delicately along my jaw. In the past, I would have been desperate to cover them with makeup. Now, I saw them as part of my story, a map of where I'd been. They were proof that I had fought a battle and won. After the shoot, the woman from Arizona, whose name was Sarah, gave me a hug. "You were so brave up there today," she said. "Saying all that, it helped me." "Thank you." We were a community now, bound by a shared trauma, but determined to build a new shared future. Later that evening, Marcus sent me a link to the first images from the campaign. I clicked on it and saw a portrait of myself. I was looking directly into the camera, not smiling, but not frowning either. My expression was serene, confident. My eyes, once full of self-doubt, were clear. The scars were visible, not as flaws, but simply as part of the whole. For the first time, I looked at my own reflection and felt nothing but a profound sense of gratitude. Sophia was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. Justice had been served. And as I looked at the powerful, resilient faces of the other survivors in the campaign alongside my own, I realized the simplest truth of all: justice looks beautiful on everyone,